You only have 3.
Good evening, everyone. 7:31, September 14, 2021. Welcome to our session. We're going to start with the pledge and then continue with the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation
under God, indivisible,
for liberty
and justice for all. Thank you. I think that Trustee Fritchie will be about half an hour late, just to let folks know. If I don't know if you send it around to everybody or just me. Just wanted people to know. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Trustee Lopez.
Present.
Trustee White.
Present.
Trustee Casada.
Present.
Mayor Levin.
Present.
Okay. Okay.
We have a
Mayors
public
and
hearing.
trustees announcement.
We can do trustees announcement. Thank you, Sue. Any announcements from the trustees? Looking at the gallery.
I have one.
Hey, Dana, thank you.
Well, you're probably wondering why I'm wearing a mask in my house. Because I'm missing a front tooth and I just unsightly. So I'm vain enough to just be wearing a mask. I'm getting a implant. It takes forever. So this morning I went to the ribbon cutting for at Mary Knoll, Fathers and Brothers, for the first solar canopy in Ossining. It's a huge installation on 2 parking lots. It's called a carport solar system. And there are more than 2,000 panels. And they would provide electricity to the town and village to, I'm still finding out how you sign up for this, if it's still possible to sign up for it. But it's a great project and you can go check it out. If you go to the Mary Knoll post office, you can see the panels. You drive right by them. And it's pretty impressive. And IFCA's buildings will receive 10% discount on their energy Cont'd bills, I think, as a result of this, of getting solar energy from this. So I think it's really neat, and I hope someday maybe we could do something like this in the village at one of our parking lots. Congratulations to the town for having this, and thank you, Mary Knoll, for doing this. So that's it.
Thank you, Trustee White. Anyone else? I'm looking. No on Manny. Omar?
Thanks, Mayor. So this Saturday is going to be a busy day, really busy day, where we're going to have, there are lots of things happening, with 3 that I would point to. One, the farmers market that we have in Market Square is always a good time, but also there are going to be some special events happening there. I believe this Green Ossining is going to be there. So I definitely look forward to that. That's a great place to start your day. Then if I want to go to the waterfront, check out the views, and then grab some lunch, number 2 at Star Bethlehem for their fish fry, which is going to be really exciting. Once you're all fed up, you can go to the firefighter parade, which is happening on Saturday, starting at 3, and is going to be starting from Croton, Camp Woods area and going down to the waterfront. So all really great things that are happening. If you're looking for a good spot to view the parade, I know that Mike Risco Music has a nice little setup that they're setting up there. So if you're looking for a prime spot, that's one place to go. And other than that, just happy to be here.
Thank you. Just I'm going to just add to what Trustee Lopez said. On Saturday, I'm going to be down at 10 till 11:30 in the morning, standing close by to the Green Ossining booth or tent, I guess. They're going to be running a raffle. The winner gets an e-bike, I will be participating in that, but also I'm there to have conversations with the mayor. If anybody wants to, have a conversation, I'll treat you to a cup of coffee if the coffee guy is there, and 10 to 11:30. And then I am actually going to Star of Bethlehem and everything else that Omar had just said. There's just a lot of activities on Saturday, and hopefully the weather will be lovely. And I think that we are ready to move on.
Great. Stuart? I'm sorry. I don't have a public hearing on my agenda.
We do not, Sue. We go right to administrative reports with the manager. The next public hearing is not till October 6th.
Okay, why is it on my agenda? I must be looking at the wrong agenda then.
I think it,
Yeah, there's no public hearing tonight, Mayor.
I'm on the wrong one. I apologize, Sue. Got you all. I got everybody all excited there for a minute. I'm glad somebody said something. We could have just had a public hearing about anything then. Okay, sorry, I'm on the wrong
Alright,
agenda.
that's
Sorry about
okay.
that. Okay, go ahead, Sue.
Administrative reports, village manager Karen Totori.
Thank you, Clerk Donnelly. It's with great pleasure that I appoint Isabel Nigel as an alternate to the planning board. So we're very happy about that. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our first responders and our village staff for their efforts to keep our community safe during Tropical Storm Ida, and also for their efforts with cleanup following the storm. And though we fared much better than many of our neighboring Sound Shore communities, we witnessed significant flooding. And for the first time in many years, we opened our community center overnight to provide shelter to 2 people, one who was from Connecticut, who was stranded here, and one who was displaced due to the flooding. We did have a few people who were displaced, 3 families. We were able to work successfully with Galata House, Department of Social Services, and the Red Cross to find them temporary housing, and we're continuing to work to make sure that they're supported. This past week, our first code enforcement task force community walkthrough took place, and it included members of the Ossining Police Department, including the chief and Detective Chavez, Director of Planning, our head of code enforcement, building department director, sanitation, people from our water department. And during this time, members of our staff successfully identified health and safety issues that may have otherwise gone unnoticed. The purpose of the code enforcement task force is to better enable our various village departments to work collaboratively and proactively, and thus augmenting our capacity to address issues including building code and sanitation violations, as well as other quality of life issues, and where possible to work with residents to help improve Ossining on a neighborhood level. Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahaj and I attended the Westchester Municipal Administrators Association meeting today in Crawford Park in Rybrook, and County Executive George Latimer addressed the group, and that was followed by a roundtable discussion about where our communities stand on the topic of marijuana. And we noted that several communities have yet to take a position on this, and that Mount Kisco is moving forward to permit dispensaries and prohibit on-site use establishment as Ossining is.
I'm sorry, Karen, just to interrupt, that's Croton that's doing
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry, Croton.
Yep.
Thank you,
Sure.
Maddie. My mistake, apologies, but it was Croton.
Got all excited that Mount Kisco may have changed their mind because
No, and they're all
already
saying
made a
now they've
different
just
statement
announced
in
something
the
other, but
media.
that's not true, but again, Croton, that was.
We'll add that to our public meeting.
Cisco does have a CBD store now.
Well, there you go. So I was partially right in a
Yeah.
way. In partnership with 511 New York Rideshare and Green Ossining, the town and village of Ossining are encouraging Ossining residents and community members to reduce single occupancy driving on International Car Free Day, which is Wednesday, September 22nd. And we hope that people will instead telework, bike, walk, carpool, van pool, drive an electric vehicle, as some of you do, or ride a train or bus or subway. This will be Ossining's 4th year celebrating the day, and there will be a launch at Ossining Farmers Market this Saturday. So another thing happening this weekend, September 18th, and there'll be representatives from the partnership, and they'll be offering all kinds of educational information and promotional information regarding alternative transportation and energy saving mobility opportunities. So please visit www.greenossining.org for more information about Car Free Day and to take the pledge to participate. And finally, the Village of Ossining's DRI application is complete and submitted. And I want to thank everyone from our staff and the community who contributed to a strong and compelling application. Fingers crossed. That I'd also like to, unless there's any questions from the board.
I don't have a question. First of all, thank you. There's a lot there, and it's nice that we're not redundant. We're just like going right through this. I do want to say that I've been driving electric. We talked about, I have both Sue and I and others have solar panels on their house, but take advantage of, the focus this month and this weekend. But I'm in Market Square. If anybody has questions about, my husband and I and my kids drive electric cars for years now. Hybrids, electrics, fully electric. Would love to discuss it with anybody that's interested in the pros and cons of electric cars and get ideas from people. So since you mentioned it, looking forward to see how e-bikes work, both in big cities like in New York, where they've already started, versus suburban areas. Very excited about that, although you don't get a lot of exercise, but it does get people around in a much more emission-free way than cars, etc. So if anybody would like to get more information, I'm happy to do it by email, or if you want to speak to me, I'll probably have one of them down there by Market Square. I'll show you the cars. So happy to promote it. I'm doing a PSA while you're talking, Karen.
That's okay. That's a good PSA for the greenest community in the country, soon to be.
Yes, that's what we're aiming for.
So our next up, we have a presentation. It's our 2020 audit report, and we have Robert Daniele from O'Connor Davies here, and I'm going to turn it over to him for the 2020 audit report.
Okay, well, thank you. Maddie, you have the presentation, or Jamie?
I'm going to share the screen now. Hold on.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for having me present the audit results for the Village of Ossining for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020. Before I begin, I just wanted to thank the finance department, including Dale and all her team, again, for their professionalism and their audit readiness. There's a lot to do to prepare for an audit while still running the day-to-day operations. So again, we got all the information timely, and again, a big thank you for that. So I prepared a PowerPoint instead of going through a 100-page audit document, over 100 pages. If we turn to this, yeah, there you go, the agenda, we'll go through a summary overview of our deliverables and our communications. We'll spend a couple of minutes in the general fund, which is the main operating account of the village, including some budget to actual summary, some fund balance analysis, some of the major funds, a 3-year comparison, and we do that for the expenses as well. Water fund is another major fund of the village. We'll look at some of the budget to actual summary, a fund balance analysis, and some revenues and expenditures compared to budget. And then we'll close with some other consideration. The village does run some other funds that we'll briefly touch on. It does run some what we call internal service funds for its workers' compensation and general liability claims. I have a slide in there on your debt service requirements, your outstanding bonds, and your payments to maturity. Some significant estimates, I put that in there. We won't spend much time, but I'll walk you through it, and then some closing points. So if we turn to the next slide, again, summary overview. Again, we had a team of 4 or 5 people I believe we did this remotely because of the COVID situation. So our field work was completed in May. There's always some follow-up with some legal letters and items like that. So our audit was completed in June. Our report was issued actually July 2nd, 2021. Included in our deliverables, included in the big audit report is what we call the independent auditor's report on the basic financial statements. We issued what is termed an unmodified opinion. An unmodified opinion is a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that an entity can receive, and it basically states that the financial statements present fairly the financial results of the village as at a specific point in time as of December 31st, 2020, and in accordance with the standards, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Also included in your reporting packet was what we call our required communications to you folks, to the board, those charged with governance, along with our management letter. I'm happy to report that we did not identify any control deficiencies that we consider to be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies concerning internal controls over financial reporting. Again, we encounter no difficulties in the conduct of our audit. In fact, the village has a strong finance department. During the course of our audit, if we come across any fraud or any type of illegal acts, obviously we would have notified you before this point. So again, no such fraud or allegations of fraud were noted. And again, no disagreements with management. Next slide. Next slide is your summary of your general fund 2020 budget to actual summary. Again, you can see there are 4 columns. The actual this is a real summary. I mean, the actual details are found on page 64 to page 72 within the huge audit report. But again, the first column is the original budget, and that's what the village board approved back in the winter of 2019. Again, from a high level, your general fund total revenues were $36.8 million. Your expenditures were $35.8 million, representing an excess of just under $1 million. You have some what we call other financing sources and uses, and these are generally transfers to other funds, to transfers to the debt service fund to cover principal and interest when bonds are due, transfers to the capital projects fund to fund capital projects, and so on. When you factor in these transfers, you come down to that net change in fund balance, the bracketed $1.1 million. And really that represents 2 pieces, a little over $1 million, $1,012,627 is what the village board designated in the prior year to be used to balance the budget and provide a form of property tax relief. And then there's a little piece of what we call encumbrances or open purchase orders to the tune of about $121,000. And those are prior year encumbrances that roll to the current year and automatically amend the current year budget, but you're using prior year dollars, prior year budget dollars to fund those. So again, in a perfect world, if everything went according to the budget, you would have anticipated using $1.1 million of your own funds. The middle column is the final budget during the year. There are certain changes. You can see there not significant changes in revenues and expenditures. There was a rather large change in the transfers as the board approved some $500,000 or $600,000 to be transferred to the capital projects fund to purchase police vehicles, fire vehicles, and parks vehicles. So that's the significant change. You were utilizing your own funds to purchase that rather than borrowing. So again, in a perfect world, if everything went according to plan, you would have anticipated using $1.6 million of your own funds. The third column is what actually happened. And you can see at the top, your total revenues came in. I would call that break even on a $36 million budget. Your revenues came in just about $116,000 less than you anticipated. But you did have some significant savings on the expenditure side, as you can see, $3.4 million as compared to your final budget. You factor in your transfers and you come down to that net change in fund balance, a little over $2 million. So the results for the year, you had revenues that exceeded expenditures by a little over $2 million. So you're able to add that to your opening fund balance of $16.3 million, and you end the year at $18.3 million. And in the next couple of slides, we'll talk about those revenues and expenditures. But if we go to the next slide, again, I mentioned you ended the year with a fund balance of $18.3 million. On this slide, you'll see a 3-year comparison of your fund balance. We're going to focus on the 2020 column. Again, the total fund balance, $18.3 million, but it's broken down into 4 or 5 buckets, if you will. The top piece, about $790,000, is what we call non-spendable fund balance. A piece of that is in the form of inventories, not cash items, so they're not spendable. And a piece of that is really what we call prepaid expenditures. You do pay your retirement bill in advance to take advantage of some of the interest savings. So that money's set aside, the cash has gone out the door, that expense has not been recognized. When that expense gets recognized in 2021, it'll pull from this bucket, so you'll have no effect on the unassigned. You do have monies restricted, mostly for capital projects to the tune of $350,000. $17,000 is committed for economic development. Going down, you have open encumbrances to the tune of about $130,000. Again, these will roll into 2021 and amend next year's budget. And what we call subsequent years expenditures, the village board did utilize $1,046,000 to balance the current budget year in the 2021 budget, and thus provide a form of property tax relief. So again, we like to compare the unassigned fund balance, the $16 million, to your 2021 adopted budget. And as you can see, your fund balance is very healthy at just under 42%. And that, that affords the village the opportunity to provide for other capital needs down the road rather than to borrow. Next slide.
What is, I'm sorry, can you go back? Sorry.
Yeah.
What is, define for me, please, home and community services?
Those are encumbrances. Those are open invoices that are set aside in that category to fund certain expenditures related to home and community services. I don't have the specifics, but I can get that. You actually didn't have any for 2020. You did have it for 2019 and 18.
I just don't know. I think I understand culture and recreation. I just don't know what home and community services.
I think that
actually refers to.
Can I plug? Well,
Hi, Dale.
Sorry, home and community services is like the planning department mostly. So it's your zoning, planning, all those budget lines.
Okay, so then what's culture and recreation?
That's your parks and recreation
Okay,
line. So
got it.
anything that's a 7,000 series is in culture and recreation. Anything that's in an 8,000 series department is in home and community service.
Okay, thank you.
Look,
Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are your revenues that we saw before, where we saw the small unfavorable variance. And this is how you got there. Again, I have some descriptions at the bottom, but you can see the third line from the bottom, what we call non-property taxes, and that's your sales tax. And you can see that sales tax revenue came in just under $600,000 better than you anticipated. And again, this goes back, there was a 1% increase to the sales tax beginning in August of 2019. Obviously that carries forward, and obviously that activity wasn't affected as much with COVID, so you still did realize more than you anticipated. On the other hand, you see items called departmental income, and that includes your parks and recreation fees and items of that such. And again, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of the parks and activities were closed for a period of time. So that fell short of the budget by $692,000. Another items is your license and permits, and those are your building permits. Again, those did exceed your final budget by about $85,000. In the aggregate, there were some other small items in there. So again, although there was a pandemic, some of the building activity still occurred. But on the other hand, your fines and forfeitures, which is your tickets and your courts, obviously due to COVID, those were shut down for a period of time. So those didn't meet budgeted targets to the tune of about $210,000. And the bottom line, the number 5 there is your state aid, which includes your mortgage tax. And that activity obviously picked up, and you were able to realize $133,000 better than you originally budgeted. So again, not pretty much a break even on the revenue side. If we turn to the next slide, I just wanted to show you a chart of what the drivers of your budget are, or your sources of revenue. The top three drivers, as you can see there on the bottom, your first one is your real property taxes. They make up about 62% of your budget. The top there in the green is your non-property taxes. As I mentioned, your sales tax. That makes up almost 16% of your budget. And then the third largest item there is your what we call interdepartmental charges, where the departments get charged for the actual time that is spent by the various departments. And that's roughly about 10%. So that's generally those three items make up close to 80% of your budget.
Is that consistent with previous years? And I don't know if that's a question for you or for Dale. The percentages, not the numbers, but that 62% versus non-property. What is non-property taxes, by the way? I'm sorry. That's just taxes.
Sales taxes.
Sales tax. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great question. I should have included a comparison charts. Yes, but the numbers haven't changed significantly. They're right in the same area compared to 2019.
And real property taxes also refers to corporate taxes as well. Business, condos, co-ops, all that stuff.
That's everything on your tax roll, yes.
Okay.
Next slide. Again, I won't spend much time on here. I just wanted to give you a 3-year comparison of some of the major revenues. Again, your real property taxes, you can see small increases, but all remain within the 2% tax cap over the past 3 years. So the village didn't have to break its tax cap. Again, sales tax is the second line, the non-property tax distribution from the county. You can see that that's trending upwards. And as I mentioned, a 1% increase was effective in August, so that should continue to hopefully spike up. Your departmental income, again, was trending upwards, but saw a decline again due to COVID. A lot of the day camp fees and parking permits were halted for a period of time in 2020. Intergovernmental charges, again, trending upwards slightly. Again, in 2020, we saw a little increase in police services that are provided by the town. Use of money and property is just another fancy word for interest earnings, and you can see that's down. Obviously, interest rates at an all-time low. So that, I would expect that to remain pretty consistent on a downward trend in 2021. License and permits were also trending upwards again, but due to COVID, not as much building permits, although they exceeded your budget. You had a pretty good year in 2019, and hopefully the decline in 2020 was just an aspect of people holding off, and hopefully we would expect a rise in 2021. Again, fines and forfeitures on a little downward trend due to closures, again, due to COVID-19. And that's really it. Your interfund revenues, that's based on charges to other funds, and that's going to be based on activity. And since overall expenses were down, we expected that to be down as well. Next slide. Next slide is your expenditures, and here's where the savings occurred. You can see all the way to the right. You had favorable variances in almost every category, but most notably in the area of employee benefits, where you were able to have a favorable variance of a little over $1 million. And that was due to lower retirement costs that were anticipated due to positions that were not filled. You had less workers' compensation expense type items due to COVID-19, and you had an overall reduced workforce. So that's where the savings occurred. Again, the next slide is a breakdown of your expenses. And again, I apologize, I should have included 2019, but I do recall they were comparable. When I looked at your report, the comparison is in your actual audited financial statement in what we call the management's discussion and analysis. But again, the top 3 drivers here on the expense side, in red there all the way to the right is your public safety, police and fire, makes up about 33%. Related benefits to village employees, about 30%. And the third item there is the top is your general support, which makes up about 11%, and that's really your administrative cost, but pretty comparable to 2019. And again, I just put a slide in there again on the expense side, a 3-year comparison. You can see general government support, although overall trending upwards, you did have an increase in the manager line. You did add a assistant village manager during the year. There was some increased in the law department, some increased cost due to police contract negotiations, although that was coupled with a decrease in claims that you pay out, judgments and claims. That was actually down, but overall, what we call general support was up for compared to 2019. Again, your public safety, police, fire, those types of items, those are down compared to 2019. They were trending upwards, but the decrease is attributable to, I believe there were 4 full-time positions that still remain unfilled. And there was a decrease in overtime cost as well. And that led to a small decline there. As far as transportation, those include snow removal. There was less overtime in 2020 for snow removal. And that's really the decrease compared to 2019. Your culture and recreation also saw a decrease. As I mentioned before, a lot of programs were closed due to COVID, but although you see the expenses are down, as I noted before, you saw that the revenue was down as well. And then state retirement is your, what we call the employee retirement system, pretty comparable to 2019. The rates were pretty consistent. They hadn't gone up, very minimal. And the police and retirement saw a slight increase in the rates. And that led to the slight increase compared to 2019. Health insurance, again, the village is self-insured for health, so this can vary in any given year, but compared to 2019, those health insurance costs are up about 3 to 4%, so that's not unusual. We've seen them as much as 7 or 8%. And then the last items are your transfers. The village makes transfers to the debt service fund to cover principal and interest on bonds that become due. Again, that's going to vary based on, you did refund certain bonds, so some of those debt service costs came down. So that's going to vary based on the amortization schedules. Transfers to the capital projects, that's going to vary based on the village's capital needs. You did send over just under $1.2 million to fund those capital projects. And the third item is your Section 8 housing. That's an annual allocation by the village to subsidize the Section 8 housing program, but you do get federal funds to administer that program, but that's the village's portion. Next slide. Again, we did the same for the water fund. Again, from a high level, you can see that the village did raise water rates 5%. So those revenues came in $1.3 million better than anticipated. And on the expense side, also saw a favorable variance of about $752,000. You take your revenue, subtract your expenses, and when you factor in what we call other financing uses, which are transfers, the water fund had revenues that exceeded expenditures by $2 million, a little over $2 million. You're able to add that to your opening fund balance of $5.5 million, and you end the year at $7.5 million. So again, the water fund has a healthy fund balance, but again, that gives the village the opportunity to fund water-related capital projects, and it positions the village to have funding in place for debt service requirements that are probably coming with the commencement of some water capital projects, the filtration plant, and so on. So although you did raise the rates, the money is set aside, and you will have some debt service requirements as you start doing some major capital projects. Next slide. Again, it's a water fund, 3-year comparison of your fund balance. If we focus on the bottom line, your total fund balance, you can see that it went from 4.9 to 5.5 million to 7.5 million, representing the $2 million surplus, if you will. But again, same breakdown of the 7.5. Some money set aside for what we call non-spendable fund balance, 95,000. You have money set aside restricted for future capital projects, 223,000. You have some open encumbrances, or what we call purchases on order, for about $90,000, and the rest is assigned for water specific purposes And again, you're able to utilize that in future budgets. Again, I did a comparison of your revenues and expenditures. Again, the $1.3 million that I showed you here is the breakdown. It was really in your metered water sales. You know, due to the increase in the water rates, you were able to generate the little surplus of $1 million. And in the middle of the page there, you can see you had savings in all expenditure categories, again, to the tune of about $752,000, roughly about 7 or 8% of your overall budget. Next slide. One more, I think, right? Yeah, so the village does operate some other funds. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but you have a debt service fund that has $406,000 in fund balance. And on an annual basis, you can utilize that fund balance to pay down some future debt, but that money is restricted just to pay down debt. You do have an active capital projects. There's probably over 75 projects that are active. And although that fund balance shows a negative fund balance, the village has what we call a short-term bond anticipation note of $7.1 million. That doesn't get recognized until you start paying that down or you convert that to permanent financing like a bond. But the village did take advantage of some low interest rates. So currently you have a band with, I believe, a 1.25% interest rate. When you do decide to either pay this down or convert it, obviously you'll convert it to a bond, but you're able to roll this for a 5-year period. Obviously, you'll start making principal and interest payments, or you can convert it to a more secure long-term debt. You do have a sewer fund. Again, a sewer fund did rather well. Those revenues exceeded expenditures by $286,000. Sewer fund has a fund balance $1.8 million. And again, that's restricted specifically for sewer purposes. You do have a Section 8 program. You did receive and expend over $3.6 million in federal funds for this Section 8 program. The village did subsidize, as I mentioned before, about $37,000. But because the village received and expended in excess of $750,000, we are also required to do what we call a compliance audit. It's called a single audit on the Section 8 housing program. So we make sure that the funds are expended in accordance to the terms of that grant. And again, obviously, we did that separate compliance audit that's included in your audit report packet. And again, there were no compliance findings to report. And lastly, you do have a special purpose fund to account for various trusts, and that has a fund balance of $492,000. Next slide. You do operate what we call internal service funds for the workers' compensation benefits and general liability claims. What happens here is the governmental funds like the general fund and the water fund, they are charged premiums by these funds. So the money comes over. An actuary is hired to determine claims that are reported, as well as claims that are incurred but not reported. And based on that actuarial report, they come up with a present value of a liability that is expected to be paid out. And the village sends over money to cover those claims. And as far as workers' comp and general liability, the village sent over enough funds where you have fund balance to cover those anticipated claims. So there's no shortfalls, you're covered on those as well. Next slide. Next slide is your debt service requirements. Again, the top page, you can see you have $24.6 million of bonds outstanding. On the bottom there too, you also have what we call an energy performance contract. There's roughly about $750,000 left on that contract. We are required to report debt service requirements over the next 5 years, and then in increments of 5 years, and that's done at the bottom there. I just wanted to point out, you can see at the top there, in 2021, your debt service requirements are about $3.64 million. And if you don't add any additional debt in 2022, those requirements are about $3.3 million. And in 2023, it's about $3.2 million. But if we focus on 2021, if you take the $3.6 million on an overall budget of a little over $57 million for all funds, it's roughly about 6%. So that's not a significant percentage of debt service requirements for 2021 related to your overall budget. I just wanted to point out, generally we've seen anywhere from a low of 2% to a high of 12%. So you're less than in the middle of the range, if you will. Next slide. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but it is important. These are items that we have to report based on a new pronouncement. So we call these significant accounting estimates. You provide other post-employment benefits to your retirees. In New York State, you can't set money aside, but you can see there's a 3-year comparison. And I don't want everyone to go, oh my God, but based on what the, census data is sent to an actuary's hired, you send census data to this actuary, and this includes date of hire, the person's age, the life expectancy. But that, the actuary crunches those numbers and he comes up with a liability of $150 million. And that's been going up over the past 3 years. But it's something we report. It doesn't affect your budget process, only to the tune of the last line on the top part where it says benefit payments. You are still funding this on a pay-as-you-go, so you're funding this as you need to fund it. And you paid about $2.1 million in 2020. But again, in New York State, and this is with every municipality, villages, towns, school districts, this number is significant, but you can't set money aside. There's no funding mechanism in place in New York State, but we are required to report this based on what your actuary, spits out, so to speak, based on a bunch of census data. So we test the census data as well. We don't look at every person, but we sample it. And it's a significant number, but it's consistent with every municipality in New York State. Same thing with the bottom. You are part of the retirement system, employee retirement system, and the police and fire are part of the police and fire retirement system. Those systems are funded rather well in New York State compared to other states. In 2020, the employee retirement system was funded at 86.39%, and the police and fire was funded at 84.86%. So that 14 to 15% that's unfunded for each program, the village's proportionate share has to be recorded as well. It's a reporting requirement. It doesn't affect your budget process. You're not going to get a bill for this. But basically, the state has its auditors audit every single municipality and record its proportionate share. So we get those reports. And obviously for the village, for the ERS, it's a little over $9.1 million. And for the police and fire, it's a little over $11 million. But again, you still get your bill. You pay that bill on an annual basis. You're not going to get a separate bill, but it is something that we need to report. And just in closing, next slide. Again, the village has good financial health, and that could be credited to you folks, to the leadership of the village board and administration. You have provided form of property tax relief, and you haven't exceeded the tax cap, at least over the past 3 years. And you have cost-effective purchasing procedures, as well as strategic use of services with the town through IMAs, with the town, intermunicipal agreements. So why is the financial health important? Again, this is going to help you do when you calculate your tax levy. It's going to improve your cash flow, and it will impact your credit rating. And again, as you look to do some significant water projects and go out to borrow, it will have an effect on interest rates. Currently, through Moody's, you have a AA2 bond rating, which is excellent. And having that fund balance set aside and financial health allows you to fund certain projects without borrowing. Obviously, you're going to borrow for those significant projects, but on an annual basis, you have been providing $1 million to $2 million funding for capital projects. The middle of the page, again, just in closing, not only do we go through the numbers, but we make sure that your internal controls are being followed in accordance to your procedures. And again, nothing came to our attention. Everything is operating as designed as regards to your major classes of transactions. Again, we sample this, we look at journal entries and things like that. Everything is proper. The sign-offs are all there. I mentioned before that the finance department is very strong. They're very cooperative. The overall health appears strong. The village is also receiving a little over $2.5 million in federal funding based on the American Rescue Plan. And the village, obviously there are certain restrictions with these funds, but the village can utilize these funds over the next few years. And just lastly, there is a new pronouncement that will take effect next year regarding the village, and it relates to leases. So we will speak to Dale and the finance team probably in December to start compiling any new leases or any old leases that are out there, because the treatment, it will be different for 2021, but we'll deal with Dale and get those in order. But again, overall, the finances, considering COVID and everything, that the village ended up very strong.
Great.
So I know there's a lot of information I just provided, but if there's any questions now, or if anything comes up later, please just reach out to me and, I'll get you any details.
Great. Well, thank you, Rob. Very much appreciated. I'm always very excited when accounting professionals tell us how great our finance department is. Always a good thing.
Yes.
I'll just chime in with a couple of things, notes that I took down. So we have a AA2 rating, bond rating, but your report was basically, I feel like if I were to grade it, it's like an A, maybe A plus even. So is there a higher bond rating for a village, or is this the highest that we can get?
Yes, I think when you're ready to go out and borrow again, you should request a new rating, and based on your fund balances and the current year activity, it may very well be upgraded.
And do you participate in that, or that's just something Dale and company does?
Your financial advisors will participate in that. Yes.
Okay. Dale, have we been at that rating for a while now, or is this I just don't remember what we were for the past 2-3 years.
Right. Yeah. Good evening, Mayor, Board. Thank you, Rob. That was fabulous. We have been at a AA2 for probably as long as I can remember. So that's an extensive period of time. We did actually have a Moody's credit rating interview about a week ago, for which we did actually put forth our financial advisors for them to potentially look at upgrading us, of course, because we very much have a strong financial position. Within my report to Moody's in terms of our fiscal status and where we are, we also had to talk about future projects. So one of those is the water treatment plant. So when that comes into play in terms of our bond rating and what we're potentially going out, it kind of tips the scales on our debt ratio, so to speak. So at this point, they were not going to upgrade us for the current year. We did still hold strong a AA2, and we had a fabulous bond sale and refunding bond sale this morning, and both interest rates came in below 1%.
Whoa.
Which is fabulous, absolutely
Wow.
fabulous. Yes. So even though our credit rating, wasn't changed, wasn't increased, we're still reaping the benefits of having a strong financial position, with the lower interest rates.
Great, thank you. Rob, I have 3 questions. So Rob, and I'm sure others do too. Really interesting stuff. Always glad to hear this. I noticed in one of the pie charts and I know this was sent to us, I just didn't see it, so I'm sure I missed it. So you had a pie chart with like the benefits equaling something and services 11% for admin. I was expecting to see a pie chart, which I thought I normally see, which says sort of employee and salaries versus like the benefits. I mean, I'm more used to seeing that kind of a thing so that there's a perspective of what we pay in salaries, then retirement pensions, then, and it goes around. Do we have such a comparison, or is that just something?
I could get that. Included in that chart where we call public safety includes salaries amongst other things, but I would say 95% is salaries in that 33%.
Right.
And then the employee benefits include everything, your retirement, your health. So I could get, I have details that I could put together, sure.
Okay.
Salaries and related benefits.
Right. And the 3-year trend, if that's okay, if that's
Sure.
not too hard to do, that would be
Okay.
great. And
Sure.
more of a, so thank you for that. And one of the things just on a macro level, as your company does many audits, tri-state area, how would you place Ossining in relation to your other clients? In other words, consistently, does really well, surprisingly, in relation to others and how they spend their money. Are we like, and not that I'm competitive, are we like in the top 10%? Are we like right in the middle of how others, because just we have a good audit, but others may also have good audits. This might be like very typical.
No, that's a great question. And I would like to compile villages of your size so you could get a perspective. But I would say that, we do a lot of villages, we do a lot of towns, and giving the fact that you have fund balance that really exceeds what the Government Finance Officers Association says you should have in there, I would rank you a little higher than everyone else. But every municipality, every village, every town has its own capital needs. So it may look great for the village of Ossining, but some other village may be doing a tremendous amount of capital work. So again, it'll vary, but it's a great question to put it in perspective by, I would say, budget size. So I could look to do that going forward. Yes.
That's great. I appreciate it. That was it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Rob, and of course, Dale and her team. And just so we're clear, the fact that we are different and have a larger fund balance, unlike our personal checkbook, is a good thing for those that follow this. It's sometimes anti-intuitive, the words used in accounting, liabilities, and assets. I just want to make sure, good news.
Yes.
I turn it over to my colleagues. Welcome, Mr. Fritchie. I turn it over to my colleagues for other questions, if any. None?
None from me. Some of the questions I had comparing our village to other municipalities, et cetera, you were able to ask, Mayor, but I want to thank you guys for the presentation. And I continue to be very grateful that I waltzed into a situation where folks are fiscally responsible and very competent, and it's great. I have colleagues in other municipalities where it's a dumpster fire and they're trying to turn it around, and it's really, really hard. So thanks for doing what you do and making my job very, very easy.
Anyone else? Thank you, Trustee Lopez. Anyone else?
I could go if nobody else has. Rob, thank you so much. Obviously, thank you, Del, and everybody in your staff for all the hard work. I think it's a group effort, a team effort on a part of the village. I'm not. I can never get tired of actually hearing this kind of reports. It's always a good thing to hear how well we are doing. I remember a couple of years back, one of the things that is said that we should improve. And it was like, we have too much money and we need to make sure that we have to spend some of the money in there. And I cannot remember the year or what was that kind of got stuck with me. Maybe Del, you remember, I think Tom was at that time with us. But let me ask you something, Rob. Out of the report, is it something that we should be doing different out of this whole thing, or something that we could improve more than what we already have done? Is anything else that we should be looking at? Something that Dell should be looking into this in regards to estate-wise?
Well, no, from an internal control standpoint, I think everything is operating according to, you know, what you know, according to your policies and procedures. Again, you know, I can't guide you on fund balance. You do have a great fund balance, but you do have capital needs and you are utilizing that down the road. Another point too is, you know, with the cash and the fund balance, you know, at a specific point in time, you have to make the school districts whole. So, you know, there's a cash flow type
Dale,
thing.
I'm seeing a shaking of the head over there with Dale.
I'm sorry, Rob.
He wants to correct something.
Rob wears two hats as well because he does
Oh,
the
that's-
town
sorry.
audit.
Yeah, sorry.
We're the village.
Yeah, it's not the school. I'm sorry. Forget that.
Get rid of the school.
We'll edit this part. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, so it's hard for me to recommend, you know, I think operations are functioning properly. And again, based on needs, you're going to have capital requirements that, you know, may chip away at your fund balance. So, I mean, to be in a healthy spot is always great, obviously, considering what has happened over the past couple of years or recently.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear, that we are doing exactly what we needed to do when we needed to do it. So I do appreciate that. The mayor already asked some of the questions that I was going to ask in relationship to comparisons and what projections on the past 3 years. So if whenever you get a chance, if you could provide that information to us, that'll be very helpful. And, you know, this is, to me, this is more like the beginning of a budget season, which, you know, that's sort of where we are right now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else, unless I missed, is that a hand up, Dana, or is that just a, were you raising your hand there, Dana, or you just?
Touching my head.
Okay. Thank you. So it is the beginning of the budget season. The village staff works really hard in collecting the budgets. The thing, we all work together on many things, but the one thing only the trustees actually do, and every mayor says this, I think every year, is we vote on the budget. There are only 5 people in the village that can pass a budget, vote on it. It's one of our fiduciary responsibility, one of our main responsibilities that only we do. So budgets are super important. It's you know, makes everything go round. So it is sort of a kickoff to the budget season, and the trustees will meet with the staff. There'll be a presentation, and then there will be a submission of a completed and then approved budget that we do every year. The public can watch these meetings, etc. So thanks for bringing that up. I think it's great. I think that for anybody that lived through major recessions, depressions, and all sorts of stuff, municipalities that keep a very healthy amount of money so that for big projects and improvements, there's money. It's like keeping money in a savings account in your personal finances. You've got to have some money in there for good and bad times. And that's what this conversation, part of it is the fund balance is about that. Okay, folks, unless somebody has anything else to add, I think we will move on. Rob, thank you again for you and your staff for the diligence.
All right, thank you, folks.
Have a good night. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. They're usually super exciting and people do stay. But if you don't want to stay, we will not hold it against you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Be safe.
Good night.
Okay,
Good night.
Corporation, good night. Corporation Counsel, Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Sue. Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
Just a few brief things with regard to tonight's agenda. The public may note that we have again the bond issue. We need to put that on so that we can get it properly both posted and published in the newspaper. So we're going to put that on before the board again tonight. We have the adoption of proposed local law 12, which deals with the use of the new parking system within the village-owned municipal lots. We'll be calling for a public hearing on the honorary street naming of James Lewis Basin Jr. At our last work session, there was a presentation by our village historian with regard to that application. We will also, the board also will be considering a resolution tonight, a resolution F, which is essentially a rebid of some of the annual bids that we have through the DPW. Initially, there were no bids for these particular items. They were rebid, and now there are bids, and they are will be accepted by the board tonight. The board will authorize the village manager to send the road diet traffic study to the New York State Department of Transportation for its review and approval. That is resolution G. Resolution H is tax certiorari settlement on 191 South Highland, which North Highland rather, which was previously discussed. And finally, resolution I, which is something that if you think about it long enough can make your hair hurt, and in my case, just makes my head hurt. That is the requirement by the state of New York, particularly the local retirement system, for information with regard to the hours put into work by our elected officials, in this case, trustees Lopez and White. This document gets posted by the clerk and then ultimately gets sent up to the comptroller's office, but it is an annual reporting requirement. So that's why that's there. And there is a link to the report that will be submitted. The link document does not have the identification numbers on it, but the document that would get forwarded to the state will in fact have that information. And that's it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Sue?
Okay, Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good
you
evening.
hear me?
A couple of investigative matters to start with. So both messages already sent to the board earlier in the day. Early this morning, our department took a call of a student who reported having been approached by an adult in a green sedan somewhere on Spring Street near Everett Avenue. Detectives are investigating. It doesn't appear that there's any reason for parents to panic. We're checking the veracity of that claim and trying to find out if we can see what really went on there. Encouraging parents to use ordinary caution with their children. As always, children should not talk to strangers and adults that they don't know. More importantly, I think that people need to know that it shows our open lines of communication with the school district, and anytime we have an issue with a student, to make sure that the school is there and them having the best conduit to the parents to be able to get information out. So with an abundance of caution, we want to let parents know anytime there's any reason for us to be looking into something. As of right now, it doesn't appear to be something incredibly serious, but nonetheless investigating it as if it is. And if there's more on that, we'll be reporting shortly. Second to that, closing up a case in the past. In March of 2020, we had a horrific incident in the Avalon apartment complex where we had reported on a young woman having been stabbed by a person multiple times. Today, we received a press release from the district attorney's office indicating that that individual had pled guilty to 14 felonies, including a number of hate crimes. So that was excellent work. What's not mentioned in the press release, we'll try and do a little bit of tomorrow, often goes unnoticed, as the cops that responded to that did a tremendous job. If you recall, in March of 2020, we were on the very beginning of COVID, where people were absolutely terrified to get out of the car, and these folks got out with little precaution to engage with an armed suspect, be able to take that person into custody without incident, render aid to a person in a really critical incident. Just great work for Officer Dubray, Officer Colon, Sergeant Castanis, Sergeant Mayor Rana, and Detective Chavez and Hagestilianos, who investigated that one. On some more positive notes, Detective Chavez, a couple of weeks ago, we had mentioned they announced the 40 Under 40 award yesterday at the general session of the annual conference for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. He was officially recognized by them as a member of their 2021 40 under 40 class. Unfortunately, that conference having been scheduled for New Orleans and the area being affected by the hurricane, the in-person portion of that conference was canceled. Lucky for him, they are giving him complimentary entry to next year's annual conference in Dallas, where hopefully the weather will be a bit better and he can go down there and enjoy his big honor. It is a pretty huge deal to get that award, and the other people that are on that list have really gone on to do some remarkable things. Law enforcement professionals all over the world. Community outreach stuff. We did a movie this week, Parent Trap, on Friday night in Nelson Park, while a bunch of other things were going on. Glad to be a part of all of the exciting stuff happening in Ossining. Not a huge crowd, but exactly what we're looking for. Enough room for people to spread out, and just another option for people to do stuff. And last thing is, we are still intending on trying to do one more bike night. We have tried desperately to get people out cycling again. The last one was a big hit. So keep an ear tuned for that one. We'll try and throw one more social event before it gets too cold. As of right now, we do not plan to have a Halloween event on Main Street, as that would fly directly in the face of all the COVID restrictions. However, my party planning committee here is encouraging me to do another Halloween parade as we did last year. So we'll find something. Must have something fun for kids. We'll find a way to make it happen. So we'll announce all that as soon as we figure out what we're going to do. That's all for me tonight. Thanks.
Thanks. Just a couple of comments. I don't know if my colleagues, first of all, let's start at the beginning, which is, it's always sad to hear when these kind of activities go on, but the police, you know, this is what we count on the police to be there for, and to help the community through those tough situations. The 40 under 44 Officer Chavez, I actually went on the website and read some of the other folks that are on there. Really, like, you do not normally see in the media. I don't actually know where you ever see any of this, but the idea of police officers around the world, they're all wearing different uniforms. They're all, I mean, when you look at the website, although Professor Chavez, I mean, his photography, he's such a friendly guy, but his picture is like so stern. I was like a little scared there, but I looked at him and everybody else, the men, the women. It's really unbelievable, because I don't think any of us think of police internationally and globally, and it's quite a fascinating reading. If anybody's time, there is a website for the organization of all the winners in Ossining. I don't know. I know you have received that honor. I thought it was 4 years ago.
I am now over 40, so I'm in a different class of award winners at this point. But
you did get, you got that.
I got it at 38 or 39, so it's a couple of years back.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the only award winners there have been from New York in the history of that one. I know that there was one from the Buffalo area, a good friend from New York City, one from Albany, myself, and Detective Chavez. So his award being very remarkable for his community outreach work with the Hispanic community through social media, which I've bragged over and over and will one more time, is the only of its type. Right. So we've been invited next year to present, he and I, me mostly as a facilitator for him, and the first time he'd be presenting in front of probably upwards of a few hundred people in that room, if not 1,000. I bet he gets a large crowd for that one, but they intend to bring him on as a presenter next year on that topic, so that he can talk to other agencies and get them involved.
Well, I mean, this is fantastic. So from New York State, I'm hearing 4 people, 2 of whom are from Ossining, just saying, for really great stuff. So it's worth mentioning more than once. So congratulations on that. The important question about the Parent Trap is, which version? Like, is it the 1950s? Is it the 1990s? It's very important.
We did the 90s version.
Okay. All right. I'm okay with that. It's one of my favorite movies. It's something I watch with my daughters. All kidding aside, it's a great thing to do. It just shows a mixture from the beginning of what you presented tonight to the end. It shows really a plethora of things that police officers do every single day. So thank you. And you and I will have to talk about Officer Chavez, not in the public meeting, because obviously the community needs to hear more about him and see more of him. So I thank you for that. I don't know if my colleagues have any comments, or we can move on. Okay, Sue?
Okay, organizational announcements. Announcements for any event related shall be no longer than 2 minutes. Is there anybody here that wants to present a event or something about their organization.
We're gonna do a little tap dancing in case we have two people on, in case they want to say anything about an event of their organization.
Raise
Not
your
s-
hand.
Raise your virtual
Virtually.
hand. We can't
Yes.
see you. And we'll bring you over, and counting down in my head. I think we can move on, Sue.
Okay, public comment on agenda items. Visitors are accorded 1 4-minute opportunity to address the board on any resolution on the agenda.
Right, so it's any of the resolution of the agenda. Again, we have two community members that I can see. If you raise your virtual hand related to agenda items.
Okay.
Not seeing any, Sue?
Okay, village board resolutions. Approval of minutes, September 1st, 2021. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approve minutes of September 1st, 2021 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? Manny, anything on the vouchers?
That was the
Uh,
minutes.
No,
I'm sorry, minutes. Sorry, thank you, Bob. I'm a little ahead of myself. Okay,
All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the voucher detail.
there we go.
Now that the Board of Trustees.
Sue, we sort of can hear you, but we're not really hearing you. Something with your mic.
Sue, you muted.
So you,
He's not-
we didn't hear you, Sue.
We see your mouth moving. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got to read it again, Sue.
Okay, thank you. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated September 14th, 2021 in the amount of $733,769.99. Do I have a motion?
so move.
Second.
Comments?
No comments from you, Mayor.
Thank
Everything's
you.
good as always. Thank you, Dell.
Well, Sue,
Okay, a resolution authorizing the
Vote.
construction of the Indian.
vote.
Oh,
Gotta
all
take
in
the
favor?
vote.
Sorry.
Aye.
Yes, all in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry about that. Opposed? Okay. A resolution authorizing the construction of the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant project in and for the town and village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, at the maximum estimated cost of $63,160,000, and authorizing subject to permissive referendum and issuance of a $63,160,000 serial bonds of said village to pay the cost thereof. Whereas by resolution dated June 20th, 2018, the Town of Ossining Planning Board declared itself the lead agency pursuant with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, for the Village of Ossining's Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant Facility project, in which the village-owned property is located in the unincorporated portion of the Town of Ossining. And whereas by resolution dated September 5th, 2018, the Town of Ossining Planning Board accepted the lead agent status, found that the action of it to be a type 1 pursuant with SECRA and the regulations of the Department of Environmental Conservation, and issued a negative declaration with no significant environmental impact for the action. And whereas by resolution dated August 21st, 2019, the Town of Ossining Planning Board adopted Attachments 3 to the Environment Assessment Form, Notice of Determination of Non-Specific and Amended Negative Declaration. Whereas by resolution dated June 20th, 2020, the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees acknowledged the secret determination and amended negative declaration by the Town of Ossining Planning Board, and now therefore be it resolved by the affirmation vote of not less than 2/3 of the total voting strength of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, as follows. Section 1, the construction of the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant project in and for the Town and Village of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, including improvements and costs incidental thereto, and thereby authorized, subject to permissive referendum, for a maximum estimated cost of $63,160,000. Section 2, the plan for the financing of the aforesaid maximum estimated cost by the issuance of up to $63,160,000 in serial bonds of said village, thereby authorized to be issued, therefore pursuant with the provisions of the local finance law, provided here, however, that such amount, $3,160,000, is anticipated to be received in grants, and the amounts of the bonds authorized to be issued shall be reduced by the extent of the receipt of such grants and any other grants received in connection therewith. And section 10, the resolution is adopted subject to permissive referendum. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And this is a roll call vote.
Yes, it is.
Trustee Casada,
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie,
Aye.
Trustee Lopez,
Aye.
Trustee White,
Aye.
Mayor Levin. Mayor Levin?
Did we lose the mayor?
She's here, but it looks like her camera may be off.
Yeah,
No,
Mayor
sorry.
That's okay. We just need your roll call vote.
Sorry. It's an eye on that. Do you get it? You can hear me
Oh,
and
it's an
see
aye.
me?
Okay. Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Didn't realize it.
No, thank you very much. Okay, D, adoption of the proposed local law 12-2021, a local law amending chapter 250, article 3, section 250-33.1, vehicles and traffic parking, sanding and stopping, metered parking for the Village of Ossining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees and the Village of Ossining are now considering the adoption of a proposed local law 12-2021 entitled the local law amending chapter 250, article 3, section 250-33.1, vehicles and traffic parking, standing and stopping, metered parking for the Village of Ossining Code. And whereas in accordance to the New York State law and the Village of Ossining Code, having provided all, required notice, the Board of Trustees conducted a public hearing on September 1st, 2021, in person and via Zoom platform, during which the public had the opportunity to be heard regarding the proposed local law. And whereas on September 1st, 2021, at the conclusion of the public hearing was closed. And whereas the proposed local law has been considered by the Board of Trustees, and it has been determined that there is no impediments to proceeding with the adoption of the local law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 12-2021 as local law 12-2021 and directs that said local law to be filed and distributed in accordance with applicable law. Do I have a motion? Need water. A motion?
So move.
Second.
Any comments on the board? I just want to say that this, we spent a lot of time on this, when people say, I didn't know, et cetera, all of our meetings on Wednesdays are held, are recorded, and they're also, so they can be viewed at a later time, but they're also, this involved a lot of public conversation at one point or another within this year. Maddie, I don't know if you want to add. I know a lot of people work on this. Everything we do is a team effort, both the board and the staff. I hate to always elevate one person because people confuse that as if they're the only ones, but I would say, Maddie, you are part of the leadership here. Did you want to comment on this briefly because it's been discussed so much in any way?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I will say first and foremost, thank you to Stuart, because not only is he helpful on just about every project that we work on together, this local law that's actually allowing us to take funds through the new app was something that came from him. So thanks to Stuart for that leadership in particular. As far as the app itself, we're still working closely with Passport to iron out the final details in terms of what are we going to call the certain zones and things of that nature. But we are almost there. And this was, as the mayor mentioned, a very long, very deliberative, very thought out process. Manager Dettori and I actually had a chance to talk to some of our colleagues today at the Managers and Administrators Association, several of whom also use this same product and were quite pleased with it, and definitely confirmed that we had made the right decision, specifically how it works in with the equipment that we already have for enforcement. So we're very excited. Special thanks again to Chief Sylvester and his team, Lieutenant Damiano, Sergeant Donahue, John D'Angelo, our parking enforcement officer, as well as Dale Brennan and Sue Donnelly and the folks in the clerk's office. It really does take a village, as everyone here says all the time, and this was no exception. So thank you.
So this is, thank you, Maddie. This is part of, we have a few pieces, both legislative and policy and community outreach that involves, it's a little funny name, mobility, traffic, meters. It's all the topic of cars and people and how they use the village, whether they're walking, they're riding, and their vehicles and parking. There's a number of studies for years. People have been complaining about different aspects of mobility, whether it's the commuters or it's people walking or handicapped. So we have a bunch of projects in layman's terms. This is one of them, to move us into the 21st century, and we're not recreating the wheel. We are looking at where things have been successful, things that we can afford to do, and things that fit our community and should fit well for the next couple of decades at least, thinking a bit forward, collecting data, all sorts of interesting things. I don't want to repeat all the many meetings we've had about this, and I don't mean staff, I mean with the public. So I'm sort of like happy in September to see this stuff like really take shape and get legs. It's like sort of exciting, actually. So anyway, wanted to put that in because a lot of work does go into this stuff, and it seems when we vote on it that it's not as exciting as when we argue about how to do it. So we should spend an equal amount of time getting excited when it gets done as we do arguing about how it should get done, and working through that. So thank you. Sue? I'm sorry. Anybody else have any comments on this? Stuart, you look like you.
No, I just want to remind the clerk if we can do this as a roll call vote, please.
Oh, absolutely. So we will start again with, hold on a second, let me get my list here. Trustee Fritchie?
Aye. Aye.
Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Casada?
Aye.
Trustee White?
Aye.
And Mayor Levin?
Aye. I just want to say, so as you read this, it's Deputy Mayor Quesada.
Oh,
I know he doesn't mind, but you know, just for the records.
Okay. Okay. All right. Roll call. Just 1 second. Just wanted to put that down. Okay. Call for a public hearing, proposed honorary.
Oh, Sue, again, something with your microphone. Oh, she froze.
If she does not come back, I'm happy
Street.
to.
Oh,
There we go.
Sue, you froze a little bit, so I don't know where you are, but if you could,
Okay.
if you could
Let
start
me do it
again.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place on October 6, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. to consider the proposed honorary street naming of the corner of South Street and State Street in memory of James Lewis Basin Jr. pursuant with the village's honorary street naming policy, and be it further resolved that as a result of the Chapter 417 of the laws of 2021 signed into law on September 2nd, 2021 by Governor Huckle I can't even say her name right now, yeah. Which law authorizes any public body to meet and take such actions. Am I reading the right one?
Yeah,
Yes,
you
you
are.
are.
I know, I got a little thrown off base, I apologize. Allowing the public to be physically present at a meeting. The public hearing will be conducted remotely via Zoom platform with the instructions for those who wish to watch and to participate listed below. And that be further resolved that any comments regarding the proposed honorary street naming will be accepted by the Board of Trustees at the bot@villageofossining.org. And again, on the webpage, and this will be posted on the clerk's bulletin board, will be and I'm sure in many other places, will be the the Zoom meeting information. Do I have a motion?
Folks,
So moved.
So moved. Second.
any comments? We heard from our historian about street naming. But if there are any additional comments, I will only say that while we didn't get a lot of folks watching us last week, I did get comments from people once they saw the name, James Basin, I think I'm saying it right. Many folks had reached out to me and a couple from Star of Bethlehem who had known him there, but also a couple of folks from Croton. I just want to share with the board that people were moved by the fact that we're doing this. So I just wanted to share on that note. We do get more complaints than happy notes, but for me, this was, I did not know the gentleman myself, but it was apparently something that people appreciate. Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, DPW bid awards, materials, supplies, and services for the period of October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, and October 1st, 2021 through April 30th, 2023. Whereas the New York State law provides for a municipality to advertise and award bids for certain materials, supplies, and services as specified therein through the use of a bid process which allows for the purchase of such items at a fixed cost to the municipality. And whereas the Village of Ossining has in place a procurement policy which provides for purchases and acquisitions of certain materials and
Sue, we lost your sound again.
Sue? No, Sue?
She's going a mile a minute.
well as a maximum
So,
work. Oh, no.
You have to go back. Where did you leave off? We lose your, and I don't think you're muted. We just lose you. We see
No,
you.
I don't get muted. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Sue, start with the second whereas clause.
I apologize.
Second
Whereas-
whereas.
So whereas the Village of Ossining has in place a procurement policy which provides for purchase and acquisition of certain materials and services by the village as required by New York State law. And whereas the Village of Ossining has re-advertised for certain materials, supplies, and services through the bid process and has incorporated the bid requirements for signed purchase orders for certain work, as well as maximum work to be undertaken by contractors and maximum projects expenditures without pre-approval of the village manager or board of trustees, consistent with New York State law and the Village of Ossining's procurement policy. And whereas the Village of Ossining advertised for bids consistent with the New York State law and received responses for such bids at the bid opening on August 25th, 2021, and therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby awards the bids for materials, supplies, and services in accordance with the attached recommendation from the Department of Public Works with recommendations circled, and further be it further resolved that the award of the Water Department Materials Group 5 pipe and pipe fittings and boxes and Group 6A Muller hydrants and 6B Muller hydrant parts and 6C Muller gate and tapping valves and 6D Muller brass and 6E Muller double strap service saddles, and 6F Muller stainless steel kerr box rods for a period of October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, September 30th, 2022, and be further resolved that the award for the electric services for the period of October 1st, 2021 through April 30th, 2023. And they're attached to your information. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Sue?
All in favor? I'm sorry,
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, authorizing the village manager to send the Village of Ossining US Route 9 diet traffic study to the New York State Department of Transportation for approval. Whereas the Village of Ossining commenced a study in concert with the New York State Department of Transportation to better understand how US Route 9 corridor within the village could be reimagined to break down the divide between the east and west side of the village and better connect the two neighborhoods. And whereas the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, was established to guide this study and review and provide feedback on interim and final study products. And whereas TAC consisted of a staff from the Village of Ossining, representatives from the Village Board of Trustees, and the New York State Department of Transportation and consultant firm. And whereas Corgan Manning Engineering LLP on behalf of the village commenced the study in January 2021 to evaluate the feasibility of implementing a road diet along US 9 Highland Avenue, Albany Post Road corridor within the village from Cedar Lane to Cedar Place. And whereas the road diet study was presented to the Board of Trustees at a work session on September 8th, 2021. Now therefore be it resolved that the village manager is authorized to transmit the final report of the Village of Ossining's US Route 9 road diet traffic study to the New York State Department of Transportation for the department's review, analysis, and approval. And again, you had all of those parts in that you could look at. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Whoops. Any comments on the board? Sue?
Well,
All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Hold on. Dana?
No, I would just like to say, it being part of the process, it was very interesting, and I'm glad that we're able to send this on to the next phase, and hopefully it will come out in a favorable way.
Thank you. Another
So
one of
all-
those fingers crossed scenarios, but on this one, I'm feeling really good about this. I'm feeling this is the year. 21's the year to get this moving after many, many years of folks talking about it. So all good stuff. Sue?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, resolution authorizing tax certiorari payment for 191 Enterprise Corp., 191 North Highland Avenue. Whereas tax certiorari proceedings were instituted against the assessor of the town of Ossining, the Board of Assessment Review for the town of Ossining and the town of Ossining by 191 Enterprise Corp. Against petitioner's property situated on 191 North Highland Avenue in the Village of Ossining and designated by section 89.11 Block 2, Lot 82 in the Village of Ossining for the years 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 assessment years under index numbers 63660-2016, 65196-2017, 67335-2018, 66914-2019, and 60602-2020. And whereas the Village of
Sue,
Ossining
you can go right, Sue, go right to the resolve paragraphs.
I can, thank you,
Yes,
sir.
you may, ma'am.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, upon certification by the village treasurer and all the aforesaid taxes have been paid, thereby authorizes and directs the village treasurer to make a payment of such refund of real property taxes due for 191 Enterprise Corp. To Joseph Albert Esquire, the attorney and agent for 191 Enterprise Corp. As required by the consent judgment, and therefore be it resolved, the village treasurer is authorized to make aforesaid payment, so the village will avoid any payment of any penalties, and therefore be it resolved that the village treasurer shall make the notion in the margin of the assessment rolls of the village of Ossining that said assessments that were reduced and the payment of the refund for the overpayment of real estate taxes has been made pursuant with said judgment. And then there's a schedule, and it tells the years and the assessment with the total value of the village being $3,309. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second,
I think Bob was going to second, but you were on mute, Bob.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay.
I'll live with it.
Sue?
Can't have them all, Bob. Can't
No,
have them all.
I know. Besides being late, so I'm trying to make up for being late.
You're okay. Don't worry about it. We'll get you on
Okay.
the next one. Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Okay, establishing the standard workday for certain elected officials. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining establishes standard workdays for certain elected officials as required by the Office of New York State Comptroller and the New York State and the local retirement system, which standard workday and reporting resolution is annexed therein, and therefore be it resolved that the village clerk of the Village of Ossining shall post the standard workday and reporting resolution for at least 30 days to be available to the public. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any comments on this? Just for the public's sake, Dale, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. So, people, especially when they move out of cities like New York, the mayor, there's a sort of just an explanation about mayors and trustees. The village manager and staff are full-time employees for the most part, police, etc. But the trustees and the mayor in the village of Ossining, we are different from the town, by the way, but in the village of Ossining, we don't actually have an actual scheduled workday. We are not full-time employees. Many of us, by design, it's designed this way, have full-time jobs. And so there has to be some calculation for payments, etc. And that's what this is about. Just the wording that's used, I always find that people must think that we are full-time mayor and full-time trustees. They ask me, what are my hours that they can visit me in my office? Okay, most of us don't have an office. We share one office in a corner of a conference room. So I just want to take this opportunity. Many folks in the community know this, but for those people who have recently moved or may not know, the village system is set up differently. The town is actually quite different from this. And they have sort of different rules of engagement, et cetera, and villages and towns and cities, different municipalities throughout Westchester do all have their own charters and their own way of existing. So the hours discussed is a calculation that we have to submit every once in a while. That's the best sort of top line explanation I can have, so that for those that are interested, it will be on the record. Sue?
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Is there any continuing business of the board?
Not seeing any virtual
Looking
hands up.
down.
Not seeing anybody raising their hands in
Okay.
real world.
Is there any new business of the board?
Anybody?
Again?
Not seeing anybody.
Okay, is there any visitor recognition? Any visitors that want to speak now? They can speak for a 3-minute period of time.
Anybody in the audience
Please
want to
raise your
raise their
virtual-
virtual hands? Not seeing anybody, Sue.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn into executive session for the matters of personnel. Do I have a
And
motion?
legal, I think.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? I'll do that.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
Man. Okay.
So we are adjourned. It's 9:10. Folks, we're going to leave this meeting and go into exec. Everyone have a lovely evening. For those of you celebrating Yom Kippur, have an easy fast. And I hope to see lots of people this weekend in the many activities in the village. Have a good night.
Good night.